Chapter 14 of Zhang Henshui's Golden Fen family. Hearing the news from his boudoir from across the door, and being unable to come to the hall to ask questions, causing a commotion, Yanxi came back to the city and sent Qingqiu to the entrance of the alley. He didn't go into his villa and went home alone. After staying in the study for a while, I couldn't sit still, so I went to the 5th and 6th sisters to chat. Minzi smiled and said, "Lao Qi, that Miss Leng is very gentle. I like her very much. Do you have a good relationship with her?" Yanxi said, "Didn't I say that I know her uncle, and we are only indirect friends?" Minzi Dao, "You are so immature. My girlfriend. You don't want to be with her. She is close. The vixen-like thing is a close friend." Runzi was lying on a soft chair, reading an English novel. He smiled and said, "That woman named Leng. I've never heard of her." Yanxi said, "She's my new friend. Ask 5th sister. That person is really nice. Unlike you, she specializes in foreign literature. She is very good at Chinese and can compose poetry." Runzi said with a smile, "I heard from my mother that you have started a poetry club outside. You have just learned it for 3 days, and you are going to be good at it again." "I'm not saying that I can compose poetry. I'm talking about this person. Not only can she compose poetry, but she can also write very fine characters." Runzi said, "According to 5th sister, that person is already very good looking. Now you say that she is very knowledgeable and a beautiful woman." Yanxi said, "Among the girlfriends I know, I dare to say that there is no one better than her. No matter how good the method is, it can't be better than Miss Bai." Yanxi said, "I won't say it anymore. Ask the 5th sister, is the beautiful pearl as good as 1/10 of others?" Minzi hasn't answered yet. I heard a burst of laughter outside the door, and someone said, "Who is this so beautiful? It's worthless to compare Sister Shuju." In the midst of this conversation, Yufan came in with a smile. Runzi smiled and said, "Lao Qi recently met a girlfriend, and he is bragging here." Yanxi quickly looked at Runzi and told her not to say anything, but it was too late. Yufan said, "Can you tell me what this lady's last name is?" Yanxi said, "She is just an ordinary friend. Why do you want to ask about her?" "Tell you. You don't know her either." Yufan said, "Because I don't believe that she is so beautiful. I think our sister Shuju is pretty good. Now that person is 10 times more beautiful than Shuju. I really want to pay my respects to her." Minzi knew that she was a cousin. To protect Bai Shuju, don't be too explicit. He smiled and said, "You believe Lao Qi's nonsense. She is just a female student in middle school. What good is it? He had a bad relationship with Miss Bai and has not reconciled, so his words are a bit hurtful." Fen said, "Is there really such a person? What's his surname, and which school he is in?" Yanxi was afraid that the capital city would tell him and would keep scorning him. Minzi pretended not to know, and said to Yufan indifferently, "I don't know her origin in detail. I only know that her surname is Leng." Yufan is a person who is naughty on face but smart at heart. Seeing that his sister and brother are talking secretly, she is really a little suspicious. Yanxi was even more afraid that she would go into details, so she said, "I haven't listened to a play in several days. I don't know which play is good tonight, but I want to go to a play." Yufan smiled and said, "Why are you so crazy and so absent-minded? How many days did you hear the play the day before yesterday?" Yanxi said, "Why not several days? It was 3 days before and after." Yufan smiled at him and stopped talking. Then he asked Minjidao, "How much did the butterfly velvet you bought last time cost per foot?" Minjidao said, "The one doesn't matter the size, it's based on the yard. It costs 15 yuan per yard. That's not good. There is a good one, which is thin, soft and thick. It is made of plum blossoms, and is worth 30 yuan a yard." Yufan said, "I don't want that good one." Minzi said, "If you want to do it, make it good." "Yeah. What's the point of saving a little money?" Yufan said, "I don't make the clothes myself, because I buy them for someone else's wedding." Minjidao, "Whose wedding is it for? An acquaintance?" Yufan said, "Although we are acquaintances, it doesn't matter if you don't give gifts. Speaking of which, there is one person who must be given to me." She pointed her hand at Yanxi. Yanxi said, "She and I have met each other several times. Of course, giving gifts is not worth anything, but not giving gifts is quite reasonable." Yufan said, "It makes sense. But she wants to do it to you because of Shuju." This post comes Are you sorry if you don't give me a gift? Yanxi said. I don't think she would be so presumptuous as to leave my post. It doesn't matter if I don't give you a gift. It doesn't matter to you. But does Sister Shuju have the face to meet people? Yanxi said. What you said is very strange. I don't give gifts. Why doesn't she have the face to meet people? Yu Fen said. Lao Qi, I see. You and Shuju are becoming more and more distant every day. Do you really want to fall out with her? Yanxi sneered and said. It's not like falling out with each other. If the relationship is good, we should be more affectionate. If the relationship is not good, we should be more distant. That doesn't matter. Minzi saw that Yanxi's words were extremely bad, and he was afraid that Yufen couldn't bear it, so he laughed and said, Don't pay attention to him, he's crazy again. Yufen understood in her heart and didn't say anything further. After talking about other things, she went back to her room. I saw Peng Zhen lying on the bed, reading a novel. Yufen said, Look at how lazy you are, lying down again. As she said this, she took the book from Peng Zhen's hand and threw it on the ground. Peng Zhen stood up and said with a smile, Did I recruit you again? Yu Fen said, Do you dare to recruit me? Peng Zhen patted her shoulder and said with a smile, What are you not happy about? Now is the time. I'm here to vent my anger. Yu Fen twisted her body and said, Who is so playful with you? Peng Zhen said, It's not good for me to ignore you. I don't know why. If anyone offends our young mistress, I have to hit him. As he spoke, he kept rolling up his shirt sleeves, staring, eyebrows raised, pursed his lips as hard as he could, held his breath, and made the beating. Look, Yufen couldn't help but laugh, grabbed him with one hand, and said, Come on, don't act like that. Peng Zhen said, Are you going to stop making trouble in the future? Yufen said, Why am I making trouble? You guys are both. I'm making trouble. Peng Zhen said, Who is having trouble with whom? Yu Fen said, It's really annoying. What should I do? Tell me about it. Yu Fen said, Who else? Isn't it your 7th child? Peng Zhen said, Aren't you just like him? It has nothing to do with me. Peng Zhen said, This is strange. It has nothing to do with you. Why should you be angry? Yu Fen said, I just draw my sword to help. When Shuju lost her feelings, she briefly told Peng Zhen. Peng Zhen frowned and said, Can you care about these things? Yu Fen said, Why can't you care about them? Shuju is my cousin. She has suffered. If someone insults me, I can speak out. Peng Zhen said, Even Lao Qi has nothing to do to insult her. Yu Fen said, Why is it not considered an insult? How can he talk to Sister Shuju first? That's good. Now everyone talks about Sister Shuju. Is this right? Peng Zhen said, Lao Qi likes impermanence like this. I think after some time, he will get back together with the girl. Yu Fen said, Sister Shuju, I am not your 7th child's plaything. If you like it, you will make an engagement and make a lot of noise. If you don't like it, throw it aside and let him get angry before making peace. You men all have the same heart. Look, your words about liking impermanence are not human words. Can love also be like things that are inconsistent? Peng Zhen said with a smile, Okay, you fell in love with me. Yu Fen also said with a smile, I'm not scolding you. You think of women as playthings, you men all have the same mentality. Peng Zhen said with a smile, I admit that. But if you women are willing to be playthings, it's no wonder that men play with you. The clothes are not suitable at all, so don't wear them. When he said that, he pointed at Yufen and said, The gauze robe you are wearing has a name. It is called Feng Liusha. This is what a liberated woman should wear. Is that so? Yu Fen said, This is a name given by some bastard men. The white background and the light red wicker are not necessarily serious. If the gauze is thinner, it is just for coolness. You are right. Why do you wear a small waistcoat under your long clothes? Yu Fen said with a smile, If you don't wear a waistcoat and just walk with your chest held high, what would it look like? Peng Zhen said, Don't you know that binding the chest is harmful to breathing? Because if you want to go out and look good, even if your lungs are damaged, you can't care. Is this what a liberated woman should do? Yu Fen said, Stop talking nonsense. Who told you this? Peng Zhen said with a smile, Let me tell you, most of the things in the world are male and female. Only humans are the opposite, because all animals, regardless of both males and females, have the ability to survive, and no matter who they are, the male animals have to think of ways to please the females if they want to reproduce. The feathers are not pretty. Even among crickets, the male can sing, but the female cannot. That's not the case with people. All men in the world can work and be independent. Women cannot work or be self-reliant. They are entirely dependent on men for support. If she wants a man to support her, she must love her. So they try their best to modify and look good. I would like to ask, in this situation, are women the playthings of men? The more Peng Zhen talked, the happier he became, and his voice became louder and louder. His second sister-in-law, Cheng Huiqing, was passing by this yard. Hearing what Peng Zhen said about male and female, he ducked under a stand of morning glories to hear what exactly he said. Later, Peng Zhen talked about women who were solely supported by men and women who were men's playthings. He couldn't help but talk to her. Sister Yu, the third brother's words are too insulting to women. Can you obey him? Peng Zhen said. Second sister-in-law, come in and sit down. Let me explain this to you. Cheng Huiqing knew that he and his wife had a good relationship and often played together. They were arguing about something unrelated, so they didn't bother to go in, laughed, and left. It just so happened that the next day was a day when a Guangming girls' primary school held an entertainment party on the stage. Huiqing is a director, so of course he has to come. In the theater, I met Bai Shuzhu again. Shuzhu said with a smile. Second sister-in-law is really a public-spirited person. When it comes to school meetings like this, you are always included. Huiqing said with a smile. I used to help a few friends at first, but now I am famous. Even if I don't come, they will still look for me. I don't dare to take the word enthusiasm for public welfare. Like my third cousin said to my cousin, women are men's playthings. I can always overturn this statement. Shuzhu said. The two of them are always joking like this. Huiqing raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, will you be like this with our seventh brother in the future? Shuzhu said, second sister-in-law is a well-behaved person, so why not? Are you making fun of me? Huiqing smiled and said, I'm just saying this. After saying that, Huiqing went to attend to her official duties. Shuzhu was also happy for a moment. After returning home, she called Wang Yufan and laughed. Then he asked, are you Mr. Jin San's plaything? Yufan said, that's strange. How do you know this illusion? Shuzhu said, I have an ear retribution god. What are you saying? Ear retribution god is, you have already told me. Yufan said, you are still mentioning this. This is because of you. Shuzhu said, how can it be done for me? Yufan said, she said this casually, but she didn't expect Shuzhu to follow up. She regretted it and said, forget it. If it's irrelevant, what's the point of talking about it? Shuzhu said, you and your wife are fighting. How can you do it for me? Kiki, I have to ask about this. Yufan was forced to do nothing, so she had to say, this matter is too long to be discussed on the phone. Come to my place when you have time, and I will tell you slowly. Just you. Shuzhu was an impatient person and couldn't bear it anymore, so she came to Jin's house the next day. As soon as she entered the door, she saw a car parked at the door. Miley got out of the car holding a bag of books. Shuzhu called out, have you just finished school? Miley looked back and said with a smile, I haven't seen you for a few days. It's great that you are here today. I made an appointment with a few people to play poker, and you can join one. Shuzhu smiled and said, let's make a fuss as a family. Don't let me win. Miley looked at Shuzhu, pinched her left eye, and said with a smile, aren't you one of my family? Just let you win. It's not like the money fell into someone else's hands. Shuzhu smiled and said, you little thing, you've learned to keep your mouth open now. I'll go see your third sister-in-law first, and I'll settle the score with you later. Miley said, with a smile, I'm not afraid. I'll go to sixth sister's place to take French lessons. You can find me there. After the conversation, Miley's leather shoes were clattering and she had already run away. As long as Shuzhu doesn't chase her, she will keep coming to see Yufan. It happened that Peng Zhen was not at home, and Yufan was standing by the windowsill, holding a fan Leng on her left shoulder, looking at a book of piano music, leaning on the windowsill, holding the piano bow in her right hand, and pulling it continuously. Babbling, very unpleasant. Shuzhu walked gently behind her and tickled her waist. Yufan ducked out of the way and let out a sigh. Fan healing and the bow were thrown to the ground. Looking back, I saw Shuzhu. He was supporting the white pillar in the corridor with one hand and patting his chest with the other hand. It scared me to death. It scared me to death. Shuju clapped her hands and laughed so hard. Yufan pointed at Shuju and said, "You came here secretly, that's all, you scared me." Shuju said with a smile, "You are so timid. If I tickle you gently, you will be scared. It looks like this." Yufan said, "I was carelessly poked by something. How could I not be frightened?" Shuju smiled and said, "I'm sorry, I'll help you." So she came to help Yufan. "Go in." Yufan twisted her body and said with a smile, "Stop being naughty." As she said this, she picked up Fan Heling and went into the house with Shuju. Yufan said, "The weather is nice today. I wanted to come find you and go to the park to play, and you just happened to come." Shuju said, "I don't want to go and play, but I listened to what you said on the phone yesterday. There's a knot in my heart. What's going on? I want you to tell me." Yufan thought about it and couldn't deny it, so she had to tell her what Yanxi, Minzi and Runzi said. He said, "You don't have to be angry. I think Laoqi knows that you and I are cousins, and deliberately made me angry and asked me to tell you. If you are really angry, you have fallen into his trap." Shuju smiled faintly, said, "I don't care. Whether he knows someone named Leng or someone named Hot, that's his freedom of action. Why should I be angry?" Yufan said, "I heard his voice just now. Maybe he's still at home. If you see him, don't mention it. Otherwise, it will look like I'm making trouble between you two. Of course, I won't tell him about it at Minzi's place. I'm going." After saying that, he came to Minzi. Sure enough, Minzi and Miley were sitting on the hammock under the quarter. Miley was holding a French book in her hand, and Minzi pointed at the book and read to her. Minzi looked up and saw Shuju coming. She smiled and said, "Rare guest. Long time no see." She came forward, holding Shuju's hand with one hand and supporting her shoulder with the other. Shuju smiled and said, "Not a rare guest. At most, I haven't been here for a week." Minzi said, "You should come once a day." Shuju said, "If I come once a day, not only will people hate me, but I'm afraid the dogs in the mansion will also hate me." Minzi ignored her and turned to the room and said, "Seventh brother, guests are here. Why don't you come out?" At this time, Yanxi was sitting in the room, chatting with Runzi, and had heard Shuju's voice a long time ago. He thought to himself, what did Shuju say? He didn't say anything for the time being. At this time, Minzi called him out, and he had no choice but to come out with a smile, and asked Shuju, "When did you come?" "I have no idea." Shuju had already turned away when she saw him come out. At this time, he asked, but Shuju seemed not to hear, and asked Miley, "Didn't you say you were going to play poker? Why didn't you come?" Miley said, "There are not enough people, and you can join a game if you come." Yanxi saw Shuju ignored him, and knew that she was still angry, but he didn't care, and still stood aside with a smile, never expecting that the words he chatted with Yufan had reached her ears. Shuju walked into the house while talking to Minzi and her sister. Runzi also came forward. Shuju saw that Runzi was holding a small stack of water red paper, so she asked, "This color is very beautiful. Is it incense paper?" Runzi handed it to her and said, "No, take a look." Shuju took a piece and looked at it. The paper was very thin. When she held it with her hand, she could see the handprints through the paper, and the paper was like cotton fabric, and it was very soft in her hand. There was a strong scent on the paper, and the hand was stained with fragrance when holding it. Shuju said, "What is this paper used for? I don't understand. It is definitely not the scented paper that is usually put in the envelope." Runzi said, "This is Japanese goods, sent by the fourth sister in Tokyo. Look carefully. Isn't there very fine powder on it?" Shuju said, "Oh, this is powder paper, very fine." Runzi said, "The powder paper sold on the street is rough and thick. It's really not elegant. There are also some with fashion beauties printed on the surface, which is really disgusting. Look at how fine and beautiful this paper is. It has another advantage, that is, this. The powder has a little red in it. When applied to the skin, it will be particularly bright due to the heat from the body. I think it would be best if this kind of paper was placed inside a padded or cotton padded garment. First, it can protect the inside from friction. Second, the fragrance hidden in the garment is 10 times stronger than spraying perfume or putting in scented crystals, because that kind of fragrance fades easily. This kind of fragrance is hidden inside the garment, and the whole body is fragrant. It is really a world of difference compared to just 1 or 2 drops of perfume." Shuju also fell in love with it after hearing this. She asked Runzi how much he had, and if he could share some of it. Runzi pointed his mouth at Yanxi and smiled. I'm afraid there are 100 or 200 sheets. Yanxi did have a lot of this paper, but he also accepted Runzi's advice to make a silk cotton robe with scented paper inside and give it to Qingqiu. And he also told Qingqiu about this plan. It was estimated that the area of the paper was very small, and there was not much more to it except for one piece of clothing. Now Runzi asked Shuju to ask him for it, which was a difficult matter. He said, yes, I have, but I'm afraid it's not enough for one dress. Runzi said, why not? Half of it will do. Yanxi said, do you think I have that much? I gave away most of it. Runzi said, no matter how much you have, you should give it to Miss Bai first. I will give you more clothes when I make more. Okay? Yanxi smiled and said, you are good at talking. You are giving my things as a favor. Runzi said, how can it be considered as giving your things as a favor? You don't have any, so I will give it to you. Besides, considering the relationship between you and Miss Bai, it can't be said that you are giving it to her. As long as you have Miss Bai, she can take it at will. Yanxi just smiled, but Shuju kept a straight face and said nothing. Runzi said, how about it? Can you do it? Yanxi smiled and said, it's not a big problem. Why can't you do it? Shuju said, sixth sister, you should just send me directly. Don't go around in circles like this. Runzi smiled and said, I see you two are having a little quarrel, and it seems that it hasn't been settled yet. This is unacceptable. Now you two, one with the surname Jin and the other with the surname Bai, are just quarreling like this. In the future. Shuju didn't wait for Runzi to finish, and rushed forward to cover Runzi's mouth with the handkerchief in her hand. She frowned at first, then smiled and said, don't joke like this in the future. Minzi said, as the eldest sister, I have to take care of you too. Don't be like a puppy seeing a cat and get angry every time you meet each other. Yanxi said, I'm neither a puppy nor a kitten. I'm not angry with anyone. Shuju then spoke and said, so, I'm a puppy or a kitten? Yanxi said, I didn't dare say that to you. Minzi said, stop it. No matter what, it's Laoqi's fault. Laoqi will have to accompany Miss Bai to go out and play, and he will be asked to apologize. Shuju said, does he have the time? Yanxi smiled and said nothing. Shuju said, no need to play. I'd like to ask Master Qi to come to my house for a while, okay? Before Yanxi could say anything, Minzi and Runzi said in unison, okay, okay, okay. Yanxi said, please wait here for a while. I'll go get the scented powder paper. Yanxi left. Minzi smiled and said, Miss Bai, I think Master Qi is very afraid of you. He's getting more and more unruly. Without you to restrain him, he won't get better. Shuju said, you sisters always like to make fun of me. Now I want to make a formal statement that from today on, you can tell any jokes, but there's one thing, you must not involve Yanxi and me. Runzi smiled and said, why? Shuju said, just wait, it will be clear soon. Minzi smiled and said, just wait, we're willing to see it too. Miley smiled and said, I have something else to say. When people talk, you don't even want to be with Master Qi, so why do you want to play with him all the time? Minzi and Runzi both laughed, and Shuju had nothing to say. They were chatting and laughing here, and soon Yanxi came. He said, let's go, I'll take you there. Zhuzhum's Bai was really frightened when she saw this. She quickly stopped Yanxi and said, Seventh Master, don't be angry. Damai is still childish. Don't argue with her. Yanxi said, sister-in-law, how do you see her treat me? How do I treat her? Mrs. Bai said, I saw it all. She was totally unreasonable. When Zhangqi comes back, I will talk to him and ask him to persuade Damai. I think Damai will regret it. Yanxi said, that's not necessary. Anyway, it's my fault. I will avoid her in the future and not meet her, and this matter will be over. As she was talking, Shuju ran out angrily with a small suitcase. She hurriedly opened the lid of the box and saw a lot of documents in a mess. Shuju searched inside and found several stacks of envelopes, all tied with colorful silk threads. She took them all out and placed them in front of Yanxi. Yanxi looked at the letters and found that they were all the letters he had sent to Shuju since they became friends. They had agreed to keep all the letters and read them in the future, which would be very interesting. Now Shuju took out all the letters, which was clearly to eliminate the previous feelings. But he deliberately asked, what do you mean? Shuju said, "Didn't you say that we would cut off our relationship forever? Since we have cut off our relationship forever, these letters are all written by you to me. Keeping them with me will be a handle, so I will return them all to you. You have kept a lot of all the letters I sent to you. I hope you will return them all to me, so that both of us can be clean." Yanxi said, "Don't keep them, just burn them. Why return them?" Shuju said, "I dare not burn your letters. If you want to burn them, take them back and burn them yourself." Mrs. Bai repeatedly persuaded her, and said, "This is just a small matter. Why make such a fuss? Big sister, you should stay away." As she said that, she pushed Shuju to a room next door, closed the door, and took the key on the door frame and locked the door. She smiled and said, "In the room inside, there is a novel bought by your brother. You can read it inside." Yanxi said, "Sister-in-law, why bother? Let me stay away from her." As she said that, she got up and was about to leave. Seeing that he was always stubborn and never gave in to her expression of breaking up, Shuju shouted across the room, "Yanxi, don't leave. Our issues are not resolved yet." Yanxi said, "What's not to be resolved? We won't know each other anymore, and that's it." Shuju wanted to open the door, but couldn't. She looked back and saw her brother's command knife hanging on the wall. She got impatient and took down the command knife and started hitting the door. Yanxi had already walked into the yard and was startled by the sound of iron. It happened that the glass window screen in the room had been lifted aside. Through the glass, she saw Shuju holding a command knife and waving it in her hand. Yanxi was frightened and shouted, "Sister-in-law, sister-in-law, knife, knife. Open the door quickly. She is holding a knife." Mrs. Bai also heard the loud sound of knives in the room outside. He took the key in his hand, put it in the keyhole and just turned it around. After a long time, he still couldn't open the door. There were 2 keyholes on the door, and Mrs. Bai opened the wrong one. As a result of this commotion, the maid and the servants all came running. One of the servants rushed forward, took the key and opened the door. Shuju was hiding aside, her face red and panting. Unexpectedly, he opened the door too hard and pushed it inward. Shuju couldn't resist and fell backwards. When the table was hit, a porcelain vase on it fell down with a crash and shattered. Mrs. Bai panicked and shouted anxiously, "What's wrong?" She rushed forward and tried to grab Shuju's command knife. She said, "You can't do this. You can't do this." Shuju took the command knife and originally wanted to knock on the door, but her sister-in-law mistakenly thought she was committing suicide. Shuju looked at the many people in front of her and thought it was okay, so she simply raised the command knife and wanted to wipe her neck. Mrs. Bai was anxious and just shouted for help. 2 or 3 servants, some hugged her, some held her, some tried to grab the knife, and finally helped her to the side. Shuju stole a glance at Yanxi, who was standing in the outer room leaning against a sofa chair, his face pale, probably really frightened. Seeing this, Shuju became more and more proud. She cried with snot and tears. Shuju thought that this method could arouse Yanxi's sympathy, but the more she did this, the more aggressive she seemed, and it made Yanxi feel disgusted. Mrs. Bai went inside to persuade her sister, leaving Yanxi alone in the outer room, which was very boring. He walked out slowly and went home in a daze in the car. Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.